going to go into the first part, and that's how ArcPHP works. So here you see we have a flowchart basically, and the request is the user or the API or the search bot that hits your website, and then next thing it does is loads up the core of ArcPHP, which consists of a class loader, an error handling system, a dependency checker, a variable modifier, a standards enforcer, and a caching system. Now the class loader and the error handler, that's pretty self-explanatory. Dependency checker, you can actually just set up and say, okay, this class is going to have these features and these functions that it does need, and it will always check to make sure that those are available before it loads the class. This is nice whenever you're in a multi-server environment and you just want to be able to just throw your site up on different servers and not have to worry, is everything set up to your needs. So this is built in as a part of the core, and the next part is the variable modifier. This is just, is this just an integer? Is this a string? It'll strip out the different parts of that variable. And then the standards enforcer, this is where it's a little different than anyone else. When it comes in, it renames all of the environmental variables, the post, the get, the server, the request, and the session, the cookie. And what it will do is clean all of the outside junk and only give you what you are requesting. And the reason why we call it standards enforcer is it leads you to always say, okay, I want this outside variable and this is what it's supposed to be. There's no more, oh, did I remember to, quotations on that, or say that it's only supposed to be an integer check. So this is a main part that I wanted to make sure was in here, was to kind of keep that little mess up from ever happening. So, and then the next part is a caching system. I always feel that every website should have, and most do have a caching system in place. There's no reason why your PHP scripts have to be hit for every request, even though it's the same thing that's being pumped out every time. So I put a caching system in here, and the way it works is you can actually override with your own class. So that way the core is there, it knows how to request it. You only ask the one way, but you can drop in your own plugins so that you can handle it whatever way that you actually want to. Alright, so that's the core, and this is what's required for it to even work. And then the next part is the plugins, the core plugins. It's basically optional add-ons that it's not really needed, but it can be. So I included these four here. MySQL PDO, and I know there's going to be some people who say, what about MySQLi? It's personal preference. I'll show you how to just drop your own in there if this is the case that you want the MySQLi, but just to start off, I didn't want to have a whole bunch of different versions of it. I wanted to keep it simple here. MongoDB, if you haven't heard about it, you should go check it out. It's really a slick system. I saw it at the conference, at the Zen conference this year, and I was really impressed by the way it was laid out and all the huge companies that have taken it over. So it's definitely something to look at, and I say go for it with your caching and the non-SQL critical stuff type thing. The GridFS is a MongoDB add-on, and it will allow you to save large files with ease. And when I say with ease, is whenever a user requests it, instead of it just sending that whole file to that user and using up your resources for that, say, 100 meg file, it will split it up into 4 meg chunks and give it to the user in 4 megs. So the most the user can ever take is 4 megs of the resources. So there's a whole bunch of other great things it does, and you should go check that out too. It's something that's really powerful if you're doing image caching and stuff like that, you could save all your images in there, and it's easy for you to manipulate it, back it up, and it doesn't get too crazy when you get 100,000 images in one folder. That basically would never happen again. All right, and then an image handler. This is still in the works. I pretty much went and got it from CodeIgniter, and I thought they did a pretty well job with it, and I don't like to reinvent the wheel, so I put it in there and then customize it for the likings of ArcPHP. I took a lot of stuff out and then added some font overlays and things like that, but it's still in the works, and I haven't had enough time to actually put it more in a production environment, so that's why I'm not saying that I want you to just go and jump in and actually use these. Now, all of these are actually a configurable. You can say, I want to turn this one on, turn this one off, and they're all off by default, so they don't load unless you want them to be loaded. So if you go and you put the password in there and stuff, and it's still not coming up with your results, or saying can't find this, that is definitely what the problem is that you forgot to go say to put a 1 in the fields in the config file. Alright, the next thing is the custom plugins. So this is actually the order that it comes in, and so right at the top, before you even get to your actual site part, it allows you to throw in your own plugins, and you can just throw them into the plugin folder, which you can get out of the docs section, and it automatically will pick it up and load it, and you can do the dependency checker to make sure that whatever functions you need in that class, like if you're doing some image stuff yourself, you can do it in there. I usually throw in a common class, and then that way I can have like those little functions that I like to have. I can put them in there. Some people will do the sessions, whatever you can think of that doesn't really fit into the MVC framework, but it's something that your whole site is going to want to use. It loads before it ever gets to the bootstrap start. So now here's the next part, is this is where it turns into your MVC. Some of the features that this has in there, and got this off of YouTube actually, was to merge the CSS files, and I really like the idea of that. I usually do it by hand, cache it, and just leave it that way, and then whenever I go to launch a new version, this way you go into the core view folder, you throw in all the files that you need, and it will automatically merge them together and spit it out with one nice clean URL for the main stuff. And then for your view folders other than the body and stuff, that's where you actually go and it will just append it to the bottom of the page. I think if that makes sense, it's so that you don't have to, because if you specifically go and say I want to put this JavaScript on this one page, there's no reason to put that into a file, because then that's just another request. So if it's only going to be on that one page, which that's what it's pretty much saying, is then it would just throw it at the bottom of that page into some script tag, and the CSS is the exact same thing. All of this I'll do another video so that way it's a lot more clear, but so everything hits into the main controller. All the URL requests are automatically sent to the controller and sent with a variable. You pretty much have all the freedom to do whatever you want once it gets to the controller. I've seen where people will just create a custom plugin and make a URL splitter type function, and then you can actually go in there, and that's where you can start deciding, okay, this is how my URL structure is going to be. I didn't want to go into this at all because of the fact that every company is different, and blog informational type companies, they're going to want to do a URL structure that's totally different than an actual e-commerce company, which might have URLs all over the place and have no relevant structure to your MVC, and it's just because the figureheads will just say, hey, I want this URL, and but it doesn't fit in my framework. But that's why. So we pretty much just left this open to whatever you decide you need, you can just go in there, plug it in, and pretty much make it whatever it is that you need. Arc is just supposed to be the foundation. I don't even know if you want to call it a framework. We'll see what happens over time. But any suggestions, any problems that you ever had, make sure you head over to Bitbucket and open up a issue ticket, and I'll be glad to answer everything that comes in. So um, I hope this didn't confuse you anymore, and move on to the next phase. Thanks.